Hi folks, welcome back to the Homestead. I'm your host, Travis. Wanted to talk a little bit today about where to live. This is kind of a video response to... I've seen a few different channels actually talk about this, and one in particular that's well known is Pastor Joe Fox over at Viking Preparedness, so it's kind of a response to something that he's talked about and a few others, and that's moving to the Ozarks. Especially if you're doing the homesteading, prepping, off-grid, self-sufficient lifestyle. And my take and why I think it's a great place, why my wife and I think it's a great place to move to. I have lived in the Ozarks most of my life, 35 years for the most part. My wife also, this is the area that we met, was in the Ozarks. And one of the things that brought us together was our mutual desire to kind of live off-grid and live off the land and that sort of thing. So when we met, we really didn't have anything specifically tying us to this area. So we, started thinking, is this the best area that we want to live this lifestyle, or are there other areas that would be better? And so we did a very kind of technical analysis of where to live, pros and cons of different areas, costs, different things like that. And in the end, we found out and figured out that, we're in the best place. Now, there are other reasons, and Pastor Joe touches on those spiritual reasons. He talks about coming out of her, my people, and he believes that God is calling people like us to this area. But I want to touch on some more technical reasons. Now, the Ozarks, for those of you that don't know, it's a plateau. It's referred to the Ozark as the Ozark Mountains, although they're more like really steep hills. 1,000, 1,200 foot is the average height on some of these peaks around here. So, yes, nothing like the Rocky Mountains or even the Appalachian Mountains that I've been to both. I was actually born in eastern Tennessee, so I'm quite familiar with the Appalachian areas. So what is it about the Ozarks that is appealing? One of the things is that it's the population density is actually quite low. There are a few larger kind of metropolitan areas, Springfield being the largest, but they're still not huge. We're not talking millions of people living in a town. Most of the towns that would be considered large have less than 100,000, and then Springfield has around 200,000. But the great majority of the land is very, sparsely populated. The area covers pretty much the third southern part of Missouri and about the northernmost, quarter of Arkansas, and then a little bit of Kansas and Oklahoma on their eastern borders. But why Missouri? It's actually pretty cheap to live here too, or the Ozarks. And I'm going to focus on Missouri because that's where we live. I believe that Pastor Joe Fox lives down in Arkansas, maybe 2 or 3 hours from us. I don't know exactly where. I've never directly communicated with him. But I do know that there are many others like us throughout the Missouri and Arkansas Ozarks. So I'm going to focus on Missouri because I know the most about it because, well, that's where I live. The land is still really cheap. You can find, it's not uncommon, although not all land, it's not uncommon to find land around 1,000 an acre, sometimes even less. I think typically when you're getting out in the woods, it's mostly around 1,500, 12 to 1,500 is usually average, unless you're buying some really nice farmland. The area is great when it comes to weather. Yes, it does get hot and humid in the summertime, but not nearly as hot and humid as it does in the deep south. Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, it doesn't get anything like that. The winters, we do have winters, but they're nothing like up north either. So I think when it comes to weather, it's a good balance. We have a good amount of rain, usually 40, 50 inches a year. There's a lot of groundwater, so it's not too hard to get a well dug and find water around here. You can pretty much dig a hole anywhere and hit water. And then one of the things that we like are the laws. The laws that are in place in Missouri and in your counties really, complement this lifestyle. most of your rural counties, there are no building codes. I know that's not an absolute general rule, but most of your rural counties there aren't. In our county, there's no building codes whatsoever. The only code or license that you would have to get is if you choose to build a septic system. That is a state law. If you choose to build a septic system, it does need to be inspected and licensed, but you don't have to build a septic system. You can do it like a composting system or something different. So there's ways of getting around that. You can totally live off-grid, you can capture your rainwater, all those sorts of things. Most counties, there are no regulations on what type of structure you build to live in. None whatsoever. I know many people that live in sheds, live in old RVs, all sorts of things. You know, you can hand build you a cabin out of the trees on your property. So in that sense, there's very, very little laws regulating how you live. That's really good. Homeschooling. A lot of people that have, you know, children that would be school age choose to homeschool, that follow this lifestyle. Missouri is one of the best, if not the best, when it comes to homeschooling. You can look up, and I cannot remember the website name, but there is a website, kind of a national listing of, and they keep up on laws for homeschoolers. And if you look at Missouri, you know, there's almost no regulation whatsoever when it comes to homeschooling your children in Missouri. So that's really good. There is some, but you know, you almost never hear of anyone in Missouri being contacted by the state because they're homeschooling. You're supposed to keep some type of journal or log showing what you've learned and how many hours that, you know, your child has been in school for, you know, a year's period. But that's about it. I was homeschooled as a child, and we homeschool our children, so it's really easy. There are tons and tons of people that homeschool in this area. Lots of groups and clubs and stuff for families and kids that homeschool. Another aspect is gun laws. Many people that are homesteaders and preparedness-minded people, they have firearms, and maybe they have firearms for different reasons, whether it's hunting, personal defense, Minutemen aspect, whatever it is. Missouri has amazing gun laws. We do have a concealed carry permit, but if you're a Missouri citizen, resident, free of any felony charges and over 21, you do not have to have a concealed carry permit to carry concealed. It's what a lot of people refer to as a constitutional state. There's no permit to buy a handgun, and you can freely transfer ownership to other private individuals without any interference of the state. So, you know, when it comes to firearms, there's very, very minimal regulation. Most of any regulation on firearms comes from the feds. So that's a huge plus there. You know, wildlife. Hunting, camping, hunting, fishing, it's everywhere, you know. You may not necessarily live right on a river or lake, but in most of southern Missouri, it's not a very long drive to where you find a creek, river, or lake that you can fish in. There's hunting area all over. Of course, if you have your own land, you can hunt. Missouri has deer permits for landowner permits for deer and turkey. They're free. You just have to get online and, you know, put my name in and where I live, and they send me my permits for that year, and that's what you hunt on your own land. You can hunt off your land. There, of course, you'd need a permit for that. There's thousands and thousands of acres of national forest and state conservation land in southern Missouri that you can hunt and fish. So, hey, that's great. Growing, we have an amazing growing season. A lot of crops you can actually get 3 harvests out of. At least 2. You know, you can usually get 2 good gardens a year if you do everything right. So, I think that's a big plus. Some of the other channels touch on also the spiritual aspect, and I agree with that also. This is you know, the people around here are usually much more spiritual, religious, Bible-believing people. So that's a big thing. I won't go deeply into detail because I think it's been covered a lot over at Viking Preparedness. He's covered it a lot on Shofar Mountain channel. But I really believe that if you are into homesteading with a family, living off-grid, preparedness, those types of things, you should certainly consider Missouri as an option to move to. There's land, there was just in our area, within walking distance, really, maybe 2 miles from our house. In the last year, there's been 2 properties that were sold that were around 10 to 12 acres each, and they had a small house on them. House needed some work, but it was a completely livable house, and both of them sold between $29,000 and $35,000. Now you find me a place where you can get 10, 12 acres with a house on it that you can live in for under $40,000. It's unheard of in most parts of the country. The people here are really nice. There are disadvantages. For instance, internet. That's a big one. But hey, when the world ends as we know it, you're not going to have to worry about internet either. Anyways, we have to drive further to get things. Going to a small grocery store is a 35-40 minute drive. The nearest hospital's an hour drive, and it's a little tiny, basically emergency room. An actual hospital that can do things is about a 2-hour drive. So, there are disadvantages to that. You deal with a lot of gravel roads and steep hills, so, you better have a good vehicle and plans that when the weather gets bad, ice in the wintertime, we do get that a lot, snow. There's no road clearing at all out in the areas that we live in, so you're kind of on your own. So there are those disadvantages to it. But it's much easier to do than it is a lot of places because it's so much cheaper. The cost of living in southern Missouri and northern Arkansas is extremely low. I know the opposing argument is as well the average wage is extremely low in that area. That's true. We have a much lower wages than you would find on the Pacific Northwest or in the Appalachian area. But the cost of living is also extremely low. It doesn't take very much to live here. There are a lot of people around here, farmers, Amish, off-gridders, things like that. So the people, a lot of the people in your community are going to be like you in a lot of ways. So I would strongly consider moving here if that's something that you're doing. You're kind of looking of where to move to. We live in the south central Missouri Ozarks, just north of the Arkansas line, kind of north of Mountain Home, Arkansas. But there's lots of places all over to move to that have, and another thing that the Ozarks is absolutely beautiful. It is amazing, the natural beauty in the Ozarks, and it's, we're going into fall here. It's pretty cold today. It's rained all day yesterday. The trees are starting to turn, leaves are falling, and the fall in the Ozarks is absolutely amazing. There's so many hardwood trees, oaks, hickory, maple, things like that, and when fall hits, man, it's just amazingly beautiful driving through the countryside. So again, I would strongly suggest that you consider moving here. Those are some of the options that we looked at, and they work very well for us and our lifestyle. So if this is the type of lifestyle that you're looking into, maybe you're already there, but you're kind of figuring out, do I live in the best place? I would consider the Ozarks. One other thing that I just about forgot, if you're the type of person that wants to prepare for the poo-poo hitting the fan, and you're thinking of major natural problems like earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, Missouri is a good place for that. Doesn't mean that we wouldn't get any of that, but when you look at a map and you consider where Missouri lies, especially the Ozarks and northern Arkansas, we set in a real good place for that. Also, I don't remember what branch of the government does it, but they do put out maps and stuff on, where they believe if there was a nuclear war, which areas would be the most hit, which areas would be the safest. And if you look at that, Missouri Ozarks fares pretty well on those maps also. There's no real targets. There's no missile silos. There's no large, metropolitan areas right around here. So it's, highly unlikely that this area would be a target for that. So if those are some things that you think of, the Missouri Ozarks is a good place. Anyways, that's about all I have to say. I really think if you're a homesteader, if you're a preparedness-minded person, if you are wanting to find others, followers and believers and like-minded people like yourself, move to the Ozarks. All right, we'll catch you guys later.